Out of the Ordinary Insights, brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
Welcome back. You're watching Captains of Industry. Tonight we're talking to Khanyisile Kweyama. She is the Executive Director of Anglo American. When we began the program, I asked her why she took up the job, given there's so many issues that are in it, and we went over that. Just a brief background. She joined Anglo American as Executive Director in September 2012, and before that had served on the executive committees of Anglo Platinum since 2011, and then before that had worked for BMW, Altec, Balawold, etc., and all those other companies. When you come back, Khanyisile, and you look back over your career, you think it helped you, shape you to the challenge that you've taken on with Anglo American? Just how much of it?
Absolutely. You know, I at times when I reflect, I think I've always been the only female on the exco. I've always been the only black female on the exco. And with different male personalities around the table, and often I had to fight battles, and in some instances accommodating, and in some instances that were feeling, you know, we don't have to listen to this woman. So yes, it did toughen me, because I've always had to shout to make my voice heard. I've always had to make sure that I'm taken seriously. And in some instances, and a lot of my career was in human resources, as you know. And sometimes companies do not always take human resources as seriously as they should, even though when you really look at it, you think we always say it's about people, and that's where the driver of the people is. But companies don't take it. So I have always had to fight the female, black cause, but as well as the human resources cause. Which at the end of it, everybody agrees that is actually the most important, because if you don't have happy people, if you don't have people who come to work and are registered and clock in and all those things, you will never have a company.
Absolutely.
So I think I was being prepared for that throughout, and the fact that it has been in multi-sectors has also assisted, you know, to make sure that as I get into this role, I am able to look at the business picture and the broader picture, rather than just focus. If I had probably worked in mining all my life, I may not have been able to put it in the context of the broader South African economy. Because I think this role of Anglo American in South Africa goes beyond mining, because you know, you will hear that I think about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, we were awarded the best corporate citizen, and that goes beyond. That's not about mining. It's just about saying a corporate has a responsibility to play in the community, and we get those accolades. We have enterprise development, which talks to the economy, because how many times do governments and politicians say the growing sector is the SMME sector, and we are playing in that space as Anglo American. So
which brings us to your role inside Anglo American as Executive Director. I think I remember reading over the internet some reference to your position and the kind of role that you play as a representative of Anglo American in South Africa. What is that role exactly?
That role, somebody was appealing to me to do something, and I said, well, you know, I've got to talk to this. And they said, but you are the country office for Anglo American. And that's really what it is, because you have business units that have their own boards and entities, but Anglo American's agenda in South Africa is driven from this office to ensuring that the business units are coherent in their strategy, and ensuring that we are all dancing to the same tune is housed here. So
which is extremely challenging.
Just like the mommy, you know how the mommy has to make sure that everybody goes to school, everybody has eaten, even if she's working, and all
harmony
those
things. In the house.
So it is creating harmony within the whole Anglo-American family, and to be the main point of call when government wants to knock on the door. They need to know, you know, that this is who we are talking to, and various stakeholders, you know, when they are looking at Anglo-American, this is the first point of reference. And I think we are.
Would you say that's the chief function, relating to government, talking to government?
Not only, you know, because it's pronged. It's out in our communities. It's other businesses as well. You know, on business leadership South Africa, where the business agenda is being driven, that we are also the office that represents it there.
When you speak about the issues that you're dealing with now, when you were growing up, I would imagine you were shaped by events that shaped South African youth in the days back then. How much did that shape the way you view things in the post-democratic South Africa, particularly having grown up in a system that regarded black people as subhuman?
I mean, I would say that's what drives me, or that's what has driven me throughout the years. I mean, I grew up in a family where not your typical activists in that, I wouldn't say my father was the ANC or the UDF, but my family was just very activist orientated, and my father always was looking for solutions. So he served on whether it's school committees or school boards, and at the time when the unrest was very rife in the township, my one brother was arrested during the unrest. And, you know, you saw how your parents were actively, instead of fighting with him for having done that, but were organizing young people and trying to say to them, keep on going to school, you know, while you are fighting the system, go to school, because that is what enabled us to be able to be sitting in these chairs now, because we do have the necessary education experience. But to the extent of hiding activists, you know, assisting them to leave. So it was always within my family's DNA, and with the people that I grew up in a township called Attridgeville, and the list of leaders that come from there is long, and we could go on forever. So these are people that shaped me, these are people that influenced me, so that even at a young age, when I sort of thought this is not working here, you know, and I was at university when we were arrested and kicked away from school and started being questioned about who do you talk to, who are your contacts. Then I left and went into exile. And went immediately and interacted with the ANC, eventually ended up going to school, so that once again, because at the back was always my parents saying, you need to go back to school so that you can come, you need an education, and coming back. When I came back, I worked at CODESA, which is the negotiations forum. I worked for the consultative business movement at the time, which was facilitating the negotiations process. So once again, even early on in my career, it was always about facilitating, about parties talking to each other. At that time, the then Nationalist Party government talking to the ANC for the first time eventually became a formal forum with all the homelands, with the IFP, and you know the dramas that unfolded there. So that was just part of my upbringing and very early career.
So suffering, struggling at a very early age. Are you angry?
No.
Are you're not angry anymore?
No, because anger just eats you. You know, and you just become angry, bitter. I'm angry at the system that brought us there, because we lost so much progress and traction over many years, and we are now having to repair what should not have been. Would have been a very great country, would have had, you know, resources that were utilized properly, that were not ring fenced for a certain part of the population. So angry from that, but I do not let the anger drive me, and I don't let the anger consume me, that I'm still in angry mode up to today. And now I'm saying, well, I have an opportunity to be a voice for those who don't have the opportunity to be heard, to speak out and to do that. So I then take that and direct it. But what the anger has translated into is to positive, constructive energy that I then use to take to another level.
Nelson Mandela taught us to forgive our enemies, and he did that excellently.
And then the Lord takes care of them.
Absolutely.
In his way.
Do the dirty work. Let's talk about your role within Anglo American. What role do you play? Are you the link between the government and Anglo American as executive director?
The answer to that is yes, but that's not all I do. So that is one aspect of it. Many stakeholder management is a big part of it. And government is not the only stakeholder. There are other stakeholders, other businesses in the mining industry, and that's why we participate in the chamber. And I'm also an office bearer in the chamber as well, because we have to look at the industry as a whole, because Anglo American does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within the mining industry that is in South Africa, and also, you know, broader into the continent.
I won't ask you what keeps you awake at night, because I think I have a fairly good idea of what keeps you awake at night. But I want to ask you about perhaps 3, 4, 5 main things that you are addressing with government right now.
Well, I think in the platinum, review is one that's very topical, that is public, that everybody knows about.
When do you expect that to be resolved?
It's in a process. You know that post the announcement, there was the 60-day process with mineral resources that will also then lead on to the process with the labor unions as per the Labor Relations Act. But having said that, I think we don't want to see it prolonged as long as possible. We'd rather come to solutions sooner rather than later. That is one. The migrant labor system, I think one cannot be in a mining company like Anglo American and not pretend that the migrant labor system does not affect us for the effect that it has on economies, other provincial economies, but for also what we saw last year, where we see informal settlements all around, because people don't want to invest their money in building a house in Rustenburg.
Yeah.
They'd rather take it back home to the Eastern Cape.
Sure.
And so that is something that I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, what great solutions can I have on this? I think education is one that is on my mind, because even from an human resources experience in my previous life, when we were looking for engineers and we're looking for students to fund for engineering studies, we found that the maths and science was absolutely not up to par. So it's how we as the private sector influences government on the education system, so that we have an education system. And they're saying you educate a child, you educate the nation.
True. And
we need to get to grips with that.
How far are we in terms of where we want to be? Mark South Africa as a country.
How many years, 20 years down the line. And when I look at other democracies, the UK, the USA, they're old, they are many years. So we are a very young democracy. And I think sometimes we have taken up, as a country now, we have taken up challenges that are being taken up in first world countries, for lack of a better word. And so people have this expectation of us that, because we can host the World Cup, we have one of the best telecommunication systems in the world. They expect that we should be operating in that dynamic. But I think people need to give us the patience, and this is to the global community now, is that we are a young democracy. And we should be assessed not against the UK today, but let's look at where the UK was 20 years ago and when they were 20 years old.
Right.
And what were the challenges they experienced. And you will find that we are doing very well.
Khanyisile Kweyama, Executive Director, Anglo American, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.